Yeah, yes. Hey, hey. Coffee Conversations with Greg Day is on. How are you? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Little different thing happening today, Thursday. Before we get into today, man, shit, Facebook took me down, man. I can't believe it. Like, I don't know if I'm in Facebook jail or whatever, and I don't know why. It's really interesting. Coffee Conversations with Greg J has been a blessing. We've had, man, I mean, just the whole gamut of culture. So I'm not quite sure what their issue is, but we're working on it and we'll be back there. In the meantime, you can get us right here on YouTube because we're always streaming live here, YouTube. And then we'll repurpose our broadcast and hit us up at beachcityradio.com, beachcityradio.com. Now, as I understand it, folks can still see, my pages. So maybe somebody could share two coffee conversations on Facebook so that folks won't miss it. But at the same time, I'm still making it available, the audio version, Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, just everywhere you want to be. That's the news of the day. Man, a lot going on in these days and time. We had a fascinating discussion on Tuesday with our good friend Ludlow Creary talking about the Derek Chauvin trial last Thursday. A lot of you have been writing, so thank you so much for your comments. We had the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Los Angeles Dodgers. That was a interesting conversation. And all the while those conversations were going on, we were reading in the news about the city of Manhattan Beach, California. Manhattan Beach, beautiful town, one of the beach cities here in Southern California. And, there's history there. Location called Bruce Beach, was a location on the beach expressly for African Americans to come and enjoy their beach activities, staying in fancy hotels and whatnot right there. And through eminent domain and systemic racism, that property was taken away from the Bruce family and I guess folded into the government of Manhattan Beach, and the rest is history. And so, Supervisor Janice Hahn and others have stepped forth, and now the wheels are in motion to return that property back to descendants of that family. And here, look, my Rolodex just keeps getting deeper. I'm just reading and observing community and culture just like you. And I am meeting and having great conversations with awesome, awesome people. Look, Chief Duane Yellowfeather Shepherd, and family spokesperson for the Bruce family, relative. Uh, good morning, Chief. How are you today?
Good morning, brother. How are you?
Doing all right, my friend. Doing all right.
What,
Look, I'm
what,
I'm
what,
I'm just trying to figure it out, brother. So, Chief Duane Yellowfeather Shepherd, talk to me.
yeah, yes. Well, you must be number one doing something right if Facebook took you down. That's just, so. So I wouldn't agonize over it. There are other
Right.
platforms. When people want to see you, they'll find you, just like they
That's right.
find me.
That's right. That's right. Good stuff. I appreciate you so much. You know, our good friend Carolyn Evans down there in San Diego texted me and said, "Look, you got to talk to my friend Dwayne here, and I'm doing so. I'm just meeting you, so an honor to meet you. Any friend of Carolyn is a friend of mine. That's
Yeah, well,
we go back 1,000 years."
yeah. She told me, and I'm very proud to be on your program.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, so Chief, I wasn't quite, prepared for what I learned when I looked you up there, and I see your designation as Chief Duane Yellowfeather Shepherd. What Before we get to the Bruce Beach stuff, just tell me how you became a chief and what tribe or nation, I should say, do you
Okay.
represent?
Well, in 2013, my grandmother on my father's side passed away. She was the oldest living Wampanoag Indian at that time. We had the funeral, and I had been trying to repatriate her to her tribe for quite some time, for almost a couple of decades. And finally, just about a week before she passed away, I was able to reconnect with our tribe. They sent acknowledgement to her funeral, and they asked me, because we were very close to powwow time, to come visit to the powwow. And I know that she would have wanted me to do that, so I went there. When I went there, they made me chief. And I said, well, chief, I don't know anything about tribe. I said, chief, it's in your blood. You'll be able to do it. And I said, well, how long do you need me for? He said, for life.
Mm.
So they made me a clan chief. I'm chief of the Turtle Clan. I am also a tribal elder of the Pocasset Wampanoag tribe of the Pokanoket Nation. And we have a reservation. We have the first reservation ever given to indigenous people in this country. It's called the Watuppa Reservation in Fall River, Massachusetts. We are the first contact tribe with the Pilgrims. My 10th generation removed great grandfather was Grand Sachem Massasoit, who was the one who had the treaty with the Pilgrims when they first got there and was friends with them for 40 years. My cousin Metacom, or Prince King Philip, as some people call him, was the first to go to war with the Pilgrims and try to remove them from the country.
Fascinating. So now you're able to document your lineage all the way back, like what you just described.
All the way back to the 1500s.
Wow. Well, I've been on that trek with my family. I'm only in 1853.
Well, that's pretty much as far as we can get back, as far as the African American side of the family.
Yeah.
And then on my mother's side, I'm Choctaw Indian as well. So, it's very hard to get any records there because they were enslaved Choctaws on Bruce plantations. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. 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 All right. So with the Bruce family, tell us a little bit about your involvement here and what that's been like. I gave a brief little narrative at the top of the show there. Was that pretty accurate?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Very good.
I've been researching Bruce family genealogy since I was probably 18. My great grandmother, who was Annie Bruce, her great grandparents were the enslaved Choctaw slaves from the Bruce plantations in Georgia, Virginia, and also Texas. They were moved around from Bruce plantation to Bruce plantation. There were four genealogical lines. And she had always thought that we were Cherokee Indians. And then there was some legislation to make the Cherokees give them federal recognition. And she wanted to be a part of that federal recognition because she always believed that we were Cherokee Indians. And she set me out very early in life, as my other grandmother did with my father's side of the family. We're trying to repatriate our people to our various tribes. In the course of doing that over the years, I just kept running up against running up against brick wall, until we finally ended up with this platform called Ancestry.com, where I had access to census records, records from the congressional rolls that the indigenous people in this country signed with Congress in order to try and repatriate land back to themselves in the 1930s, which didn't work for most part. And in the course of doing that, I found testimony from my great 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 uncles, no, my great great uncles, about the family and their heritage. And they said that they were Choctaw in three-quarter Choctaw, one-quarter African American. Our people were so light-skinned at that time that people in the family actually thought that they were white. And but we got this testimony from Neil Bruce, the son of Glenn and Mariah Bruce, who are our patriarchs in the family, and explaining our family tree. And it's caused a big uproar because we always thought we were Cherokees, but back in those days, people didn't lie. It was a sin to lie, not like these days, where it's perfectly okay. In fact, you're applauded for lying. Back in those days, it was a sin to lie. So we know for a fact that everything that he put in that testimony about our family was true. And then we found out that Mariah's mother, my great 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 grandmother, was a Mississippi Choctaw Indian. She was removed, I guess maybe through the wars or whatever. We don't have any documentation on that as yet. And taken to Virginia, and she was on a Bruce plantation there, then a Gaines plantation. Then she went back to another Bruce plantation in North Carolina, and then moved to Georgia. And then from Georgia, they moved everybody to Cass County, Texas.
Mhm. So I hear you referring to a Bruce County, a Bruce plantation. So what, the Bruce are were they franchises or they have more than one plantation?
Yeah, they had four. There were four brothers, and they had 4 to 5 plantations in the United States. Four of them on the East Coast, and then the one in Texas. And so our people were transferred from between families, from one Bruce plantation to the next Bruce plantation, and back and forth. And our families were broken up, as the typical story is about our enslaved people here in this country. And so, therefore, we have the 5 genealogical lines. And so we are painstakingly trying to put together. We have a very large family tree, and we're through DNA and other research trying to put together the various family lines so they can get reconnected to which nuclear family they were a part of on these plantations. So, as you can imagine, everybody on the plantation, including the white folks, were named Bruce. So we got people, we got about 3,000 Bruces, black Bruces around the country, and indigenous Bruces around the country who are desperately trying to find out what family line they're from, and that's where we're at with Charles and Willa Bruce, and with my family as well.
All right. So how did the Bruce family get here to California? So you said
No,
Texas is where you left off there. So you got to Texas. Now they get to California. How they get to California?
okay, well, we're not sure if my Bruce line is connected to Charles and Willa Bruce's yet. We've just done the DNA. I do come up a cousin to the great great grandson of Charles and Willa Bruce, Anthony Bruce. But we're still trying to connect how the families
Still
mesh
connected.
together,
Okay.
get connected together. In So Charles Aaron Bruce and Aaron Bruce, Charles Bruce's grandfather and great grandfather and father were free blacks in Washington, D.C. in the 1860s until the Emancipation Act of 1860. So they were one of few blacks in Washington, D.C., I guess maybe working on the White House or whatever, but they were free blacks. Uh, the Willa Bruce, her original name was Willie A. Walker, but she chose the name Willa because the Willie was given to her by the slave master of her mother. And so she
Hmm.
decided that she would never want to be called that again. So she changed her name to Willa. Now, she was born in Kentucky, and on a slave plantation with her mother. And her mother was Carolyn Burgess. And from there, they went to, I believe it was Tennessee, because her mother married a family named Tillman. And she had a number of stepbrothers and sisters there. But somehow she ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that's where she met Charles Bruce. They got married there, and then they moved to California, and she bought this property there in Manhattan Beach, California, for $1,200. She started out there with a little hot dog stand, lemonade stand. The white people were so elated that she was there that they sold her the property next door for $10 and left. So, so she ended up with 2 lots. So, which is a little funny story there because, as we well know, whites don't want to live around blacks at that time. And so that's why the reason they were railroaded out. During the course of that was in 1912. During the course of their stay there, they expanded that little stand to a dance hall, a dining hall, a bathhouse. They had a novelty shop there, water novelties, where they sold water rings and boogie boards and stuff like that there, and they rented swimsuits. So
Hmm.
so they had a pretty good thriving enterprise at that time. The socialites from South Los Angeles, the famous Central Avenue, where everybody
Hmm.
was there, the
Hmm.
socialites, the politicians, even the black gangsters, all had their social affairs there on the water at Bruce's Lodge, as it was called, Bruce's Resort.
Hmm. All right. So now and this is a story that I've heard about, over the years, and most recently in recent years. I mean, there was or is a marker there that marks the location of where this Bruce's Lodge was located. Describe what happened. How did the city come in to take over that land? They
Well,
use eminent domain or terrorism,
yeah,
or what happened?
well, it was a combination of both. Uh, so what happened in 1920? The Ku Klux, the people, the land developers, the white land developers who had the land around Bruce's Lodge there, decided they wanted there was too many African Americans coming in. They were taking over, which was not the case. We did have a few people build homes there on the water as well, and their homes were taken as well. But we were the only ones that had a business there, and so the Ku Klux Klan figured that we were too much of a draw, and so they wanted us out, and so they pressured the city to get us out in every way that they possibly could. They mounted a 24/7 telephone campaign with terrorist threats against Willa and Charles, mostly Willa because Charles worked for the railroad and was gone a lot. So they slashed people's tires. The visitors that came to the beach, they slashed their tires. They put up 10-minute parking signs, so you can only park for 10 minutes. So by the time you parked up on Highland and walked down to the beach, you already had a ticket because it would take 10 minutes to do that. They then this racist George Peck, who's on that plaque as the benefactor to the Bruces, which is the biggest lie ever told. He cordoned off the front beach property right in front of the lodge. So people that wanted to swim in the water had to walk a half mile to the left or right of the lodge in order to get into the water. So he put in no trespassing signs and cordoned it off. So then there were cross burnings. When that didn't work, there were cross burnings. Uh, Tires were slashed. They're saying they would let the air out of the tires. It's a lie. They slashed these people's tires, and there was no Firestone right down the street to get a tire replacement back in those days. Um, and they burned mattresses under the porch, under the back porch of the lodge. Just a number of terrorist acts. People had fights and things of this nature, and so they were constantly being terrorized and harassed by these people. When that did not work, the Manhattan City Council, uh, forced by or encouraged by the Ku Klux Klan or in collusion with Ku Klux Klan, decided to take the property and condemn it in 1924. And the Bruces fought them. Then they decided, while the Bruces were fighting them, which was a very expensive endeavor to keep their land, they decided they would take it in eminent domain under the guise that they were going to make it a public park. So in 1927, judgment was made. The Bruces asked for $35,000 per lot and $50,000 in punitive damages for the terrorism that they suffered under the hands of the Ku Klux Klan and the Manhattan Beach Police Department.
Mhm.
They were only given, so they were asking $120,000. They
Mm.
were only given 14,025 dollars out of that judgment, with the stipulation from the nice judge that they could always still be able to buy property that anywhere else in Manhattan Beach. Now they had the property there was worth $35,000 per lot. They only gave them $14,000 per lot, and I guess obviously they thought they were stupid enough to come back there and again be terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. Now another family or two did decide to take them up on that offer and move back there, and I think they quickly regretted that move. In the meantime, and then and that was in 1927 when they got the judgment. So they were wrote it out of town. They didn't get the money till 1930. It took them 3 years to get that little money. So these people who were well-to-do business owners, thriving business owners, were destitute. They moved over to a neighborhood near 20th and Central Avenue in Los Angeles. They ended up working in diners as cooks for other people. Um, and Willa pretty much lost her mind, and within 5 years, she was gone. A couple years after that, Charles was gone.
Wow, wow, incredible. Now, we had a professor on a few weeks back who, sociologist from the University of Vermont, who has mounted a pretty significant study on sundown towns around the country. And I'm listening to this and I'm wondering, you would be surprised with how many cities in Southern California were considered sundown towns where, hey, 6 o'clock sundown, we had to be out of town. Some
Uh,
towns
I
even
remember him. I remember
yeah,
him in the 50s. You had Inglewood, you had Torrance, Manhattan Beach, of course. Redondo Beach was one. Hermosa Beach was another. I mean, there was a number of places that you just could not go and be there after dark. I remember going down the hill, what we call Overhill here in Los Angeles, going down that hill toward Inglewood, and there'd be an Inglewood police car there, and he would pull you over, ask you where you going. He said, "Oh no, you're not," and turned you around right back up that hill.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. So these towns, so Manhattan Beach was a sundown town.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and in some ways it still is.
Mm, mhm. That's
Blacks
something.
are still harassed there after dark. You don't go riding through there and hanging out there. You don't partake of the restaurants and things of that nature there, and don't think that you're not going to be under close scrutiny by the Manhattan Police Department.
I've heard that. Yeah. So now, so walk us through the sick. So we're hearing that the county is stepping in and giving the land back, but I guess there are some procedures that they need to advance in order to make that really, really happen. How do you know much about that? And how why
Yeah.
couldn't the city, do since they were the ones who took it, why couldn't they give it back?
Well, once we started this media campaign, a young lady named Kavon Ward, who is one of the 0.5% of blacks that live in Manhattan Beach, stumbled across the plaque last year, last Juneteenth, decided to do a celebration there and started chanting justice for the Bruce family, justice for Bruce's Beach. And it's snowballed into a very large demonstration, which continued on to this day. There's still demonstrations out there to get justice for the Bruce family. So when she started that, we picked up the ball. One of my cousins was there, and they called me. And because I'm in the entertainment industry, they asked me to be the spokesman. And because I was historian for the Bruce family, which we now know people want to know a lot about the background of the Bruce family, they just
Mm.
asked me to be a historian and spokesman. And then they finally contacted Anthony Bruce, who I had never met before, who was
Huh.
the great great grandson of Charles and Willa Bruce. And he decided after talking with us that he would prefer that I be the spokesman as well for the family in the course of these actions that we're about to take. So the Manhattan Beach City Council, with their eminent domain proceedings, their illegal eminent domain proceedings, said that they were taking the land under the guise that they were going to make it a public park. Well, that didn't happen for 30 years. It was an unkept, vacant lot for 30 years. They didn't build that lot or make that park until 1957. So when they made the park, they made the park all the way down to the beach. And at some point, the state of California, their beach conservancies or coastal conservancy, asked for the land back. And so they gave them back the part of the land that was down on the beach, which happened to be our land. So so the state then gave it to the county so they could put a lifeguard training station on it. That's our land where that lifeguard training station is, right down on the coast. That happens to be LA County property. When Supervisor Janice Hahn found out that the property sits on our land, the station sits on our land, she said, "Well, this is kind of a godsend because she could arrange for us to get the land back." So, in the course of their research and discussions with us, in the course of their research, they found, and our legal team as well found it, that there was a reversion clause in that contract with the state of California, where if the county of Los Angeles ever gave up the land, they could not sell it for profit. They could not just arbitrarily give it away. They would have to give it back to the state of California. So she enlisted the help of Supervisor Holly Mitchell, who used to be a senator here, and also Stephen Bradford, who has kindly stepped up and taken us under his arm. And they introduced legislation just this past Monday to fast track the change in that language in that contract, so that the land can be given back to us this year with a 2/3 vote of the legislature. If they don't get a 2/3 vote of the legislature, then they'll have to send it back again, and it'll be a slow track bill, and it will require 50% of the legislature, which we know we can get. We also know we can get the two thirds, and we would not get the land back until next year.
Now, a couple questions here. Did Anthony Bruce, was he aware of this history prior to folks beginning to say your name, as it were?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. He was very aware of it. He was, that family suffered immensely from that terrorism. That's something you don't forget in your family when someone has been lynched or terrorized by the Ku Klux Klan. And
Mhm,
it was a
mhm.
scar. It was an emotional scar on the family to lose Charles and Willa. They had one son, Harvey, who had one son, Bernard. And Bernard kind of picked up the ball in the fight to get the land back. And he was the first one to do that. and it put a lot of strain on his relationships with his sons, and to the point that they were just terrified as they were growing up. And one they joined Derek Bruce, Anthony's father, joined the armed services and just traveled the world, and he took his sons along with him to just keep him away from this. And so Anthony, who now lives in Tampa, Florida, will tell you that it's been an emotional and financial scar on the family for this 96 years or so that this issue has been going on. So he was very aware of what was happening.
All right. So then get the land back in title and everything. Then what? Are they? What's the plan for the land? I mean, would the county still maintain its lifeguard facility and then pay y'all rent? Or
Well,
what's the deal?
well, that's part of the discussion. I mean,
Mm,
they could just pay us outright for the land. They could we could lease it to them for 99 years at fair market rent value. Um, or there was a couple of others. I don't remember have them on my
mm,
head right off the top of
mhm,
my
mhm,
head right
mhm.
now. But I mean, we're in discussions. We're tending toward leasing the land back to the county, letting them keep their lifeguard station there. Because there's a lot of income tax implications there, and other and commercial tax implications that the family could not afford to handle right now. So we think the
Right,
best
right.
bet is just to keep the steady income for 99 years and build up our generational wealth again.
Mhm, mhm. They, making moves to try to right a wrong, and I think that's it's also part of the reparations discussion. I think, it's like,
Well, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
the state of California just recently created a task force on to study the issue of giving reparations to the people who have been wronged in the state of California. In our case, the land being returned to us is only one step in what we've been asking for, and it has not been reparations. What we want is restitution for the loss of revenue from that Manhattan Beach, the city of Manhattan Beach, for the loss of revenue for 96 years from our family losing their businesses unfairly and illegally under a fraud of eminent domain. And we also want that restitution that the family was requesting with interest for the terrorism that the police department allowed to happen to our family with impunity.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one, and it's hard. I think for some people in America to come to terms that this is American history. This is really this. Look, it happened.
It happened
That's
to a lot of that was that it was a concerted plan, I believe, a conspiracy around the United States, because it happened to Tulsa, it happened in Empire, Wyoming, happened in Detroit, Chicago. It happened all over the United States, where African Americans had decided to move into place and start to thrive and mind their own business and only take from each other, or I should say, share with each other, and grow and build communities where they are loved and protected. Every time they did that, there was some white mob or even the United States government dropping bombs on them and they literally did do that. Yeah. So yeah, there are many stories around the United States that are going through this, that have gone through this, and we will be the precedent. We'll be the first one to will have gotten their land returned, and we hopefully will be the example to other municipalities that they better start digging in their pockets as well.
Mhm, mhm. It's interesting to note that people really think that California doesn't have this type of history, but indeed it does. It's interesting, the redlining. It's interesting to see, like, I bet you if you pull your covenants and conditions on your property, you'd be surprised. There might be a race clause in there, but from back in the day, depending on the age of your home. Wow.
Yeah,
So go
go
ahead.
ahead. Well, I was saying my mother bought a number of properties in South Los Angeles that did have those covenants in them when they did the title searches. And you have to live in lots. People lived outside of South Los Angeles would think that that was not going on in South Los Angeles. Where they had the first riot, 1965 Watts riot. Believe me, we knew that racism was alive and well in modern day Los Angeles. And all over the United States for that matter. But for us in Los Angeles, it did not fall on deaf ears that this was going on. It was only to the people who had basically had been you say, protected from hearing these kind of things. And so people are very surprised that it was going on only because their families kept it from them. The children, the white children, and the other minorities there in Manhattan Beach are livid. They're the ones that are keeping the demonstrations going and it's keeping the pressure on the Manhattan Beach City Council to do something about what they did to the Bruce family because they know that they were disenfranchised from the history of what happened there, and they were not very happy to find out about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw an interview with the mayor of the Manhattan Beach, and she was explaining that it probably would be, I guess, policy wise, they could not, do what they needed to do to return the land. And then that's a ton. I'm glad to hear how that has progressed. Up Steve Bradford, a good friend of mine, and that's a really good thing. It's all about policy right now, in order to get this in the hands of back in the hands of the Bruce family. Now, it's. Let me just ask you this. Now, after this is all said and done, what are we going to do about it? I mean, what are we asking the government of Manhattan Beach? We already know that they don't want to be a racist city, is what I'm seeing on the news. I mean, is
Well,
there a
they don't
chance
want
for redemption?
to. I think. Well, first of all, I really think that the residents of Manhattan Beach should recall that city council because they have bungled this whole this whole thing from the beginning. Before we even asked for anything, just because the issue came up, because Kavon Ward and her organization, Justice for Bruce Beach, brought up the issue of returning the land to the Bruce family. By the way, they never contacted us personally, but and I'm not hard to find. But and so they came out and said we're not giving back anything. These people are just looking for a payday. Then they're right, and we're not giving them a damn thing. Okay, so when I was contacted, when I heard that, I said, "Oh, is that what you think?" Okay, you got a different generation of Bruces here. Okay, we when you go low, we stand toe to toe. You're gonna have a fight on your hands, and they know it. And so, therefore, they have been very defensive. They've tried starting a task force to study the history of Bruce's Beach. And when in that study, they come out and they say the incidents reportedly happened and the facts are ostensible. I mean, these people they're the keystone cops of municipalities around the world. I don't, everything that they do, no matter what they do to try to show that they're not racist, they come up racist.
Yeah, well, the municipality has to do those studies because they have to go off the data, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's facts, but we're saying facts are facts. So what is it that we want? You want them to acknowledge it and apologize, like you saw Glendale apologize for being a sundown town, and there was another city locally here in Southern California. I can't remember which one now. It slips my mind. Basically doing the same and acknowledging the past. And I guess what I'm hearing is Manhattan Beach has not done that. Would an apology be in order?
Sir, there is nothing that they could do to make us forgive them for what happened to our family. We lost our loved ones. They're never coming back to us. We lost generational wealth. They say their ancestors did it, and they're not responsible for what their ancestors did. Well, our ancestors are still suffering from what their ancestors did, and
Yeah,
we're not looking for an apology. That apology is for themselves to show some maturity and an example for their children to step up and admit your wrongs when you've done them or when your people have done wrong. That's not for us. And this acknowledgement that they're issuing, talking about they want to issue an acknowledgement and hope that we forgive them. Well, they're not going to be forgiven. I can tell you that right now. Nobody in my family would ever forgive them for the torture that happened to our family.
wow. I mean, it's part of American history from our perspective, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And forgiveness is a tall order.
yes,
But
it is. And you can't forgive a racist. The more you forgive a racist, it just reinforces that what he's doing is successful. People who think that they're better than other people, that they are some way grander than another human being, are mentally ill. People like that need to be institutionalized and given some type of therapy and held on to until they better habitate themselves to living in normal society. And that's what we're running up against here in Manhattan
You're
Beach
gonna put
and
them in
around
the
this country.
you're gonna put them in the mental hospital, brother.
That's where they need to be, brother. These people, who, I mean, what human being thinks, what kind of human being thinks that he's better than another human being because of the color of his skin?
Yeah,
That's not normal thinking.
you're right. You got a point there. You got a point there. All right, there, man. We've had a great time this morning talking about Bruce Beach and what can the public do to assist. What do you need from the public?
All we need for the public to do is to stand their ground and demand that there are various platforms that you can go to. Color of Change has a petition up there. There's
Mhm.
Justice for Bruce's Beach on Instagram, Justice for Bruce's Beach on Facebook. Log in and just give us all the support that you can, because public support is what's going to put the pressure on that legislature to change that contract so that we can get our land back. That's the most important thing right now. Otherwise, the Bruce family is doing quite well. We got a strong legal team. We've got young people that are giving service to us, and I want to thank them for their service to their people, supporting us out in the streets. And we're just elated that Supervisor Hahn and Senator Bradford have stepped up and have offered help for us, and we're just hanging in.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Well, you know, our prayers and thoughts and vibrations of love and light are with you as you go down this journey. And you know,
Thank you, thank you. We need a lot of love.
I'm sure Steve Bradford to get it done. He's a good man.
Oh,
Good man.
yeah,
Good man.
he's a tough brother.
All right. All right, we're gonna get out of here a little early today, y'all. And you know, check out. Oh, let me tell you, Chief, how can we get a hold of you?
You
What's
can reach me. You can reach me on our Bruce family page, or through Justice for Bruce's Beach on Facebook, or Justice for Bruce's Beach on Instagram,
all
and
right.
they'll reach. You can reach out to them, and they'll put you in contact with me.
All right, y'all. There you have it. You know, Chief Duane Yellowfeather Shepherd talking about Bruce Beach, talking about connections as African Americans with the Native Americans here. It is very interesting how our, you know, genes, how our family paths have intersected in the history of this place called America.
Yes,
Yeah, I take it off Facebook, but that's okay. You can still share this YouTube live all over the social media. Make sure, tell a friend, you can share it. The audio version will be up a little later on today, so you can podcast it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. I'm talking iHeart, Apple, Google, Spreaker, Stitcher, you name it. It's out there. Just Google it. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. We're working on it. We're fighting Facebook to find out what the heck they're trying to do to us with Too Black, Too Strong. We just try to find out what's happening with the culture all across the globe. You know, that's all we're doing over here. Beach City Radio, beachcityradio.com. That's where you find us. Remember, love one another. Love one another. Love one
and
another.
power to the right people. I hope.
Power to the right people. Peace and blessings.